Hello, back again to do another unboxing and review. Today we're going to be looking at a product from Acoustics. These are the ZS6 earbuds. Now, these earbuds, you might say, well, another pair of earbuds, but actually these earbuds promise quite a few features that I think will make them stand out. And we'll get into what those are in length, but I'll just give you a little teaser. These have 8 of something. Okay, now, so let's talk about Acoustics. I've never heard of them. Up until now, I don't have any of their products, again, up until now. And I decided to go with not only the earbuds, but I got all the accessories they had available because I was that sold on the features that were promised. Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and look at the main item. As you can probably guess, the things on the side are the accessories, but we'll get to those in a bit. And looking at the box here, yes, it's really, subtle box. No flashy colors, no big bold writing. And anyway, we'll get into that later. But for right now, I'll have to hold the box extra close to the camera so you can even see it. Okay, so here's the earbud, of course, and then this kind of almost, it looks almost like a technical spec diagram type deal as their attract image on the front. You can see one of the features that makes these special, and you can see here probably, so this is the wire and that's the earbud, and as you can see there, they can be separated. Okay, more on that later. And going around on the side here, again the model, and up here I can tell these have, because it's written in English there, it does have the mic checked, and then there's something else checked, but since I don't read, I can't say that I can read Chinese. I can't tell you what that says. Okay, so going to the back, here we have, again, the numbers are at least in, okay, there we go, we got a translation there. So there are the specs, and I might as well just read them out right now for you. So the weight is 25 plus or minus 5 grams. The plug type is 3.5 millimeter. The pin type is 0.75 millimeter. Frequency goes from 7 to 40 kilohertz. And then the impedance is 15, and sensitivity is 105 decibels. Okay, and it comes from Shenzhen Yanzi Electronics Co. Okay, and on the side, there's plain stuff there, and let's look at the bottom, nothing. Okay, so that is the main item. Now we will go ahead and let's look at the accessory over here, the first accessory, and of course from KZ. So, and in case it's not coming up, this is the Bluetooth adapter cable upgrade wire. So if you've probably figured out now, if you can separate the wire from the earbud, then you could perhaps use different wires. And well, here's one of the options, the Bluetooth wire. Okay. And so again, well, I'll read the specifications here. Bluetooth is 4.2, weight is 10 grams plus or minus 3 grams. Pin type is 0.75 millimeters, of course, because it has to fit into that. Okay, line length is 73 centimeters plus or minus 3 centimeters. Material for this particular accessory is ABS. Effective range is 10 meters, and then, of course, coming from the same company that I listed off before. Okay. And over here we have, well, the case. So there it is, KZ Acoustics. Kind of has this, so feels pretty sturdy. Has a little line there for hanging off lanyard or whatever. And it closes by these little clasps. Pop these up. Okay. And there you go. So, okay, so now we've seen the case. All right, so real quick before we go into the unboxing, I thought I'd give my impressions on the packaging and the shelf presence. Well, I'll have to say I'm not a fan of this nondescript white box theme that seems to be persistent. Just look at this, for example. I reviewed these before. These are the VJJB V1Ss, and again, it's just a white box for the most part, and I can't really see how this would benefit, especially in a physical retail type scenario. I had to put up this red background here, this impromptu red background, just so you could see the item. Otherwise, it just blended right in with the floor. And since most stores have usually lighter color floors and lots of lights, this thing would just completely wash out. So I don't really get it. Must be a kind of a niche thing or trend thing, because on a practical level, it just seems kind of silly. But anyways, let's go on. Okay, so I just cut the shrink wrap here on the top and peel it off. Okay. Does it slide out? Yeah, it does slide out. Okay. Slide up the cover. Oh. Okay, so there they are under plastic. And they seem to be in a frame type setup. Let me get that out. Okay. So let's remove the plastic. There they are. Okay, the tray comes out, and then there's some accessories and on the bottom. Looks like we get an instruction manual too. There we go. And the instructions are in English. Alright. Okay, we get some extra tips there. It looks like we have 2 other sizes, so probably the small, medium, large setup. And then here is the actual cable. And here are the earbuds themselves. I'll pull them out gently here. Okay, they're lighter than I thought they'd be, and the reason I say that is because the shell, the whole shell, so the front and the back, it's all aluminum alloy. So it's nice to hold a product that isn't almost entirely plastic. And yeah, okay. So far, I'm liking it. They feel nice, and since they're not super heavy, they're not gonna just flop out of your ear if you even move your head. So that's a benefit, of course. Okay, so now let's look at the wire. Okay. This feels nice. It's how do I say it here? The insulation on this, it's how do I put it? It's kind of grippy, but somewhat smooth at the same time. So, and then it appears. Oh, okay. So when it gets towards where it's going to actually connect to the earbud, it has an extra sheathing over it that keeps it in this configuration. So, yeah. I mean, this isn't completely rigid, but you can tell it's obviously a lot more rigid than the rest of the wire. Here is our mic with one button. It's almost surely a multi-function button, but it still is one button. Down here, 3.5 millimeter, of course. And oh, look at this. Pretty major split right there. Okay, I wonder if it slides up and down. Doesn't feel like it, but okay. Now let's go. I'm gonna go ahead and hold up the earbud. Now I know earlier I promised that these would have 8 of something, and to better explain that, let's go to a drawing I made. Alright, so what we have here is a recreation I made from an exploded diagram that was provided by the manufacturer to show exactly how these things look inside and what makes them special. Okay, so let's go ahead and start at the most to the left. That is the outer shell. That's the portion people will see if they're looking at you from the side into your ear. Okay, then we move over to the right, and then inside now you'll see that there are 2 dynamic drivers, a bigger one and a smaller one. Now, these are the same type of drivers you will find in most earbuds as far as their type, the dynamic driver. However, this particular model has 2 of them, and they're of varying sizes. So the 6mm goes into that little nest that you see immediately to the right, and it slots in there. However, the 10mm, the bigger of the 2 dynamic drivers, sits on the top and kind of slides over into the main housing, which is 2 things over to the right.
so the biggest part in the diagram here. Okay, now before we go to the main housing, let's talk about this little nest for the 6mm driver. And you see that it has a little tube that protrudes out the top. And I presume, since it's called a guide tube, I'm going to make the assumption that that is to take the sound out of that small little nest and put it into the main body, and hence get that sound out and towards your ear. Okay, so now let's go over to the main housing. And you can see it has two pits. And those two pits, of course, the top's for the big driver and the bottom is for the small driver and its nest. Okay, now if we look over from the main body, go one more over to the right, you'll see something that looks essentially almost like a car muffler. Okay, now actually those are the next two drivers, and they're called balanced armature drivers. Now, let's talk about the number. So we have two of these balanced armature drivers, and then, of course, two dynamic drivers. So that brings us to a total of 4 for this one earbud. And, of course, since the earbuds come in a pair, you have 4 times 2, leading us to 8. So a grand total of 8 drivers, and that's what I was alluding to in the beginning of this video. Okay, now let's talk about the balanced armature drivers a little more, since they're not nearly as common as the other type, the dynamic driver.
Okay, so to attempt to explain what a balanced armature driver is, I'll do a little hand demonstration, okay? So the balanced armature is in the middle, and that's why they call it the balanced, right? And it kind of floats in between two magnets, the magnet at the top and the magnet at the bottom. All right, so as electricity comes through the wire, it magnetizes the magnets, and that's what's going to cause this armature to go up or down. Now, this armature here also has a little pin that kind of sticks straight up, and attached to this pin is a membrane. So as this goes up and down, you can see the pin is going to cause the membrane to flex up and down, and as that happens, those are the vibrations that you're going to hear. So that's the difference. Now, a dynamic driver is what you get in almost every earbud that you've probably ever picked up in your life, so I'm not going to go into exactly that. But those dynamic drivers are also sometimes called moving coil, and where the coil is connected directly to the diaphragm. That's what's causing the compression of air and hence the sound you hear. Okay. Alright, so now let's go ahead and unbox the Bluetooth adapter cable. Okay, so there it is. Comes in a little tray, and there are 2 little baggies. We'll start with this one here first. Oh, okay, yeah, I get it. All right, so this is it looks like micro USB. This is to charge the actual Bluetooth cable, and yep, that's one of those. Alright, okay, so now let's look at the actual Bluetooth adapter. Well, yeah, there it is. Okay, there are the connecting pins to the earbuds. And it looks like we get a bigger remote than the one that comes with the non-Bluetooth wire, which only had that one button. So what did we gain? Okay, it looks like I got a play pause. That's the circle, plus and a minus, and then there's a hole there that becomes the mic. So, oh, and then on the side, okay, that's the door for charging, I'm pretty sure. Let's pop it open here. Oh man, I put up the wrong side. Okay, there it is. So, okay, put that back in. Anything on the back? Okay, it just says Bluetooth model wireless made in China, then KZ, the brand logo on the back. Alright, so I guess I'll go ahead and I'm going to start off with using the wire that came with the actual earbuds. After that, I'll then test the Bluetooth. There we go. Alright, so I've had the chance now to use these for a few hours, and I definitely have a report on how well they performed. But before I get to that, I think it's important to cover how to put them in your ears. Now, I know that seems like I'm making a joke, but actually for these, it kind of does matter more than it does for other earbuds. The primary reason for that is, well, two. First of all, we have the cable that you have to connect, and I'll get to why that makes a difference in a bit. It leads to a funny little story. But also, the other thing is, if you look at the geometry of the earbud itself, it's rather complex when compared to other earbuds. You have, big bulbous part there. This thing comes off at an angle, and then even the thing you put in your ear, you can see that that is too at an angle. So, how are you supposed to wear them? Well, what you do, let's pretend we have a person's head here looking that way, okay? So nose facing that way, and we'd be looking at, what, the left ear then in that case. So, of course, you grab the left one, and what you do is you take this part, and you can bend it like so. And alright, so at this point, this here would be hanging off the top of the person's ear, and the earbud basically hangs in front of the ear canal, kind of like an ornament, and you go ahead and push it into the canal. And when it's done that way, it stays in there nice, partly because of the angling here, but mainly because you got essentially a hanger at the top. And it also makes a good seal for better sound quality, and it doesn't fall off your head when you turn your head abruptly. So now I mentioned a little story, and it had to do something with the cable. Now, when I first got these, we'll take the right one here, for example. Now, if we're going to do the correct way, it'd be bent like that. Okay, so what happened with mine is that mine was bent like this. Okay? And also keep in mind that when these are brand new, they're not as bendy as they are now. Okay, they just feel more. But now you know, so you're not. But I didn't quite know how bendy they were, and I didn't want to break it, so I just assumed that I had to keep it in this shape. So now here's the right one, right? Okay. Now I knew about the whole thing about I had to have it, hanging off the top, like I just showed you. So when I was faced with this, I said, okay, the only way to make this work is to go like boom. Okay. And that looks like it would work, and I thought it was great. But if you notice here, this is actually backwards. Even though it looks right, this part here on the cable, the front is supposed to be at the back, and this part is supposed to be at the front. So what that means is that the polarities were backwards. So the positive pin was in the negative, and vice versa. Now, to the credit of these, they still worked. And yes, I'm familiar, you can do that with speakers, and okay, but I still prefer not to do that, even though it still works, because if you look in there, I don't know if it's going to come up on this camera or not, because it's quite a... Okay, but anyway, you see that there's the two slots there where the pins go in, and around them they kind of have like a barrel, and that barrel has a flat, the piece of plastic that holds the two slots in position. On the bottom it has a square edge, and at the top it has a rounded edge. So when you put this in backwards, you're putting the square part over the round and the round over the square, and I can only imagine that might stretch out the jacket here, or maybe file down this so that future connections won't be quite as tight. So in order for you to avoid that, I'll give you a quick tip. It's really simple, and what you do is you find in this case we're doing the right, so the right there, you see R on the earbud, and you make it so that those two R's are coming like almost going to touch, okay? And once you do that, you bend this however you need to, and you will be good to go. Alright, so now with that covered, let's go ahead and talk about the use of the Bluetooth headset. Now this is pretty straightforward, and it's like any other Bluetooth device you've probably paired. But here's how this one works, just in case you're not familiar. So you charge it up. When you charge it, the light will be red. When it's done charging, the light turns blue. Okay, when you're ready to go ahead and pair it, you start up Bluetooth on your smartphone, tablet, whatever. And once you have that going, you go ahead and push and hold in, assuming this thing's off. You push and hold this in, and the light will go red, and then it'll start to go red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. And at that point, you can do your pairing. Okay, so that's as simple as that gets. Now, as far as what cool features this has, well, it's pretty standard, but I did notice, like when you get a phone call, the blue LED blinks, so you have a visual cue as well as the fact that this thing talks to you. So it'll tell you have a phone call, and it'll read out the number. So that's helpful. And to answer it, of course, you push this button here. Right, and as far as volume control, push and hold plus to increase volume, negative, again, push and hold to reduce volume, and you can double tap those buttons to either go forward or back a track. So, yeah, now let's talk about the sound, because that's kind of an important thing here, right? So how do these sound? These sound awesome. I was not expecting them to sound nearly as good as they did, and so I was a pleasant surprise. Now, I will tell you that when you use you use the wired connection, not the Bluetooth, I think there's a little more power that comes into the earbuds. Now, most likely that has something to do with the fact that your device probably has an amp in it, and of course the batteries, I'm assuming, way more powerful than the battery in here. But that does not mean that running it in Bluetooth mode makes these weak. Far from it, they sound great. So they sound great with the wired, they sound great with the Bluetooth, and now I should probably talk about why they sound so good. The reason I think is that you have such a great division between the different drivers, that they all can handle what they're good at. And so essentially this unit's multitasking. So your bass is being handled by the two dynamics, and then you have the higher frequency stuff can be handled by the balanced armatures up here that are really close to your ear. And I noticed while I was listening to the sounds don't conflict with one another, and because of that, you're able to get numerous sounds going on at the same time, and it really does add up to quite the listening experience. So they sound great. Now let's talk about the features that these have. Besides just sounding great, this detachable, I guess you could call it modular setup, where you can detach this from the wire, makes all the sense. I mean, I can't really believe it took this long or around this time for these to start coming out with this feature. And a great example of why it's such a stellar thing to have is these guys right here are a great example. Now you might, why did he bring these up? Well, because this is my gaming headset I was using up to recently, but I had to stop using it. Why? Well, because over here in the wire somewhere, there must be some little defect where the sound will go out in one ear, and I have to adjust the volume wheel. It doesn't matter up, down, but I have to just play with it, and then the sound will come back. Now, if that was to happen with these, I would go, oh, okay, boom, replace the wire, and keep the parts that still work. This works fine, and this works fine. Why replace that? I only have to buy the wire. So, again, it makes all kinds of sense, and I am very impressed with these, and I'm probably going to be buying another set. So, yeah, recommend for sure.